I actually watched the movies while I was reading the book, and I noticed quite a few differences, up to the extent of like me feeling like the movie series were about slightly different characters. I recently read the entire 7-book series of Harry Potter, and I did not expect it to make me cry as many times as it made me cry. And I suspect that was mostly due to the audiobook effects, because I listened to the Audible full cast audio, and let me just say, the audio effects were phenomenal. I have watched the entire movie series multiple times, and I've never deigned to like pick up the book, because the movie series after like Prisoner of Azkaban starts getting very confusing. And I'm just like, yeah, the other books I'm interested in reading. But I finished listening to Project Hail Mary on Audible. And after I finished listening to it, they were like, oh, here is a free sample of Harry Potter. And I listened to it and I was like, this is actually not that bad. And I forgot to like cancel my Audible subscription. So when I saw that I had a credit, I was like, let's continue listening to it. And let's just say, very immersive world building. I started the book like 6th of June, and I believe I finished it like the last week of June. So I was talking about the world building in this book, and Rowling was very skillful with how she like built it up, and so many people have already talked about it, how it goes from like a book for children and it grows with the children and grows with them into like their older teenage years / early adult years. It starts very light gradually, like the stakes were not that heavy in book 1. Like in book 1, we didn't know anyone who died, except for our parents who already dead before the start of the book. Book 2, you know, someone might die, like there's a very heavy chance of death with Ginny Weasley. And then book 3, we introduce like this prisoner who actually killed Harry's parents. So it's getting dark very quickly. And then book 4, boom, we get our very first death, Cedric Diggory. I cried when Cedric died. It was I think the part that was so much more emotional for me was like when Harry came back from the graveyard, and it was like, he told me to bring back his body. He told me to bring back, I was like, the audio effect on Audible honestly probably played a lot into how emotional I felt.
Dumbledore is dead.
The words were repeated. The shadowy figures pressing in on them gasped it to those around them, and then others shouted it, screeched it into the night.
Cedric Diggory, dead!
Like, I could hear everything. It was like I was watching him. It was like I was there.
Harry, you can't help him now. It's over. Let go.
He wanted me to bring him back.
It seemed important to explain this.
He wanted me to bring him back to his parents.
We start seeing very loved characters dying, and there we realize that this is truly life or death stakes. So I mentioned earlier that the reason why I did not ever pick up the Harry Potter series, I actually read just book 1. I read book 1 when I was like 12, and I didn't read any of the other books in the series because the movie just never felt all that to me. So one thing I did while reading this book, you might say, oh, you didn't read it, you listened to the other book, but actually I had an e-copy with me as I was listening, so I was able to listen on like 1.5 to 3.5x speed, depending on how fast the narrator was speaking, because there were multiple narrators. And I also had like the physical copy right in front of me, so I read the book. To those of you who say audiobook is not reading, but to me it is reading. Like, what? I'm consuming the book. So I actually watched the movies while I was reading the book, and I noticed quite a few differences, up to the extent of like me feeling like the movie series were about slightly different characters. And let's talk about that. So first, character difference. Harry in the books versus Harry in the movies. Harry in the books, I feel like was more fleshed out. I feel like we got more of a background to him in terms of like the bullying he experienced, because the movie opens with him being this sassy boy who is all like him getting the snake out of the aquarium. Like there was no confusion at all for him. Like in the movies, he seems a lot more self-assured than he is in the books. We don't see any of the bullying. We don't see any of we see very little of the complex relationship he has with his aunt and aunt's family. We don't see a lot of how he hates going back to Privet Drive every holiday. Like he detests it. Like when he realized that Sirius Black was his godfather, he was very much looking forward to like being able to like spend holidays with him. And now we know that even if, Sirius had been acquitted of his crimes, he still would not have been able to spend the holidays with him because of the protective charm his mom placed over him that needed him to stay in Private Drive. But we don't see all that in the movies. We don't see a lot of his character struggles. After Harry's name was put in the Goblet of Fire, everyone in the school hates him because the Hufflepuff people are like, you're taking our glory. But the movie kind of like just very quickly skates over that. Like the amount of hate he experiences in school, we don't get to see all of that. Also in like the Order of the Phoenix, people are like, oh, this is somebody who is just attention seeking, it's not okay. But we don't get to see a lot of that in the movies because everybody's like, no, he's not back yet. Also like his love life. The movies try to show us some form of love life of Harry's, but they did not do that very well in my personal opinion. I'm sure I'm going to remember some more of this like later down the line, but I just feel like Harry's character was significantly different. And honestly, I feel like a lot of this can be attributed to the fact that his character had an inner monologue, so I could see into his head. I could understand how he was processing the things he was going through. Oh, one part that is very key. I have to pause my audio very quickly. So in the Deathly Hallows, when Harry realizes that he has to die, I remember watching that scene in the movies and I was like, this guy just learned that he has to die and he just walks to the place of his death and dies. Like, wow, such a brave man. But then we get to the books and we see that his processing of it is like, I wish I'd paid attention to like the days and, actually like really enjoyed it. And he had all this mental processing he was having of the fact that he really has to die, and then he gets to the point where he's like, this is the end of it, this is the close of it, and that's what makes him go, oh, I open at the close. And then he tells the snitch, I'm ready to die, and then that's when the snitch actually opens up. And then when the snitch opens up and brings it, so this part make me tear up, like the part where he asks Sirius, like, is it painful, does it hurt? I was like, oh. But in the movie, I feel like it was just like, does it hurt? And Sirius was like, no, it doesn't hurt. But the books, or at least the way the narrator put it, was like very. And then when he goes to Voldemort and he presents himself to him, and how when he does die, Voldemort himself, when he comes to himself, Voldemort himself was on the ground because the killing curse he put on him affected him in some way because of the fact that Harry himself is also a Horcrux. And the protective charm that Harry, dying willingly, also put on other people. And then that whole ending speech, I'm going to be very honest, I am not a big fan of that whole face scratching, face pulling that we had at the end. I think there is this beauty and elegance to like calling Voldemort Tom, like Tom Riddle. It ending with just one spell, like Avada Kedavra, and I think Harry's was Expelliarmus or something, and it's just like Voldemort not turning to dust, but actually becoming just like a dead person on the floor, showing us that he's just like a regular man who honestly could have lived way longer than he lived for if he had just like been normal and not decided to go mad or move mad. Harry's character in the books was a more thoughtful person. We got to see a lot of the inner machinations going on in his mind whenever he was uncertain about situations, like, having questions and all that. Yeah. All right. Next person, Hermione. Hermione's character in the movies is this very self-assured, very smart as well. Back to Harry. I noticed that in trying to like get us to see that inner monologue that Harry has, they kind of give some of the thoughts Harry has or some of the processing he does to other characters. Like they say it out loud for him instead of him actually processing that. And one notable situation of that was like Harry finding the diadem of Ravenclaw. Like Harry was thinking about it and then it was like, in living memory? Well, there are ghosts here. Go meet one of the ghosts. But Luna was like, living memory, I think you should go meet the ghost of Rowena, or was it Rowena's daughter? One of the two, but it wasn't just then. I think there were other parts where the processing Harry does in his head is given to a different character to say out loud. And I don't know, I feel like sometimes it undermines how smart Harry can be. Hermione, as I was mentioning earlier, we get to see her, she's like super smart. Sometimes some people consider her like a bit too smart, like very annoyingly smart. But I feel like the only character I see that considers her annoyingly smart that they showed in the movie was Ron. While in the book, sometimes even Harry is like, oh my gosh, I'm not ready to deal with you right now. Like, I'm not ready to deal with this. Hermione was very smart, but she was also a teenage girl. And she was also very passionate about things that, sometimes people are like, can you please let us rest? One of those specifically being S.P.E.W. or S.P.E.W. That's Society for the Progression of Elves Welfare. Something like that. I think that was it. If not, I'll just put it up here. Ron, I think, is the character that is the most different from the books in the movies, because I feel like the Ron in the movies is this comic relief. And the first time I noticed it was in the Philosopher's Stone, when they go into that dungeon basement place in order to find the Philosopher's Stone. And the first trap was with those climbing flowers or vines or whatever they're called. And when they're there, in the movies, Ron is all, save me! And Hermione is like, calm down. But then in the books, Harry and Ron were there. They weren't screaming, but they were about to, and they were like, help us. Because Hermione figured it out very quickly. And then Hermione was like, oh, you have to start a fire. How do you start a fire? Oh, how can I start a fire? And Ron is like, are you a witch or what? And then she was like, oh, yes. And then she used our wand to start a fire or produce bright light or something. So there, Ron is kind of showcased to be this scaredy cat. Another occasion of this was in Chamber of Secrets when Ron was driving the car. I feel like when I was reading the book, the Ron I imagined was more self-assured. It was more, okay, this is a crazy thing we're doing. We might die, but we'll figure it out. But the Ron in the movie is also, and every time Ron was screaming, Harry was always next to him, like, just cool. But in the books, whenever Ron screams, Harry is screaming. Even with the spider situation, like, Ron did not want to go there. But in the books, the Ron in the books is just a braver person overall. And I really don't like how it was portrayed. It was just like this comic relief, like, secondary character, just somebody who was there in the books. But in the movies, it was a very brave friend to Harry. Another character who was a brave friend to Harry was Neville. We barely saw him in the movies because there's only so much you can put in movies. But in the books, Neville we get his character growth. Him growing from losing his frog on the first train to pulling the sword out and actually killing Nagini. That character growth, because at the end of the book, we see that Neville is the one who is actually the head of Dumbledore's army now, and is the one helping the students, like hiding them from the 2 Death Eaters who were placed in Hogwarts. I can't remember their names. It was the one who figured out the whole room of requirement situation to get them away from those Death Eaters, and he's just more, he has grown into a leader. We also don't see a lot of like Neville's parents in the movies. I don't even think the movies ever mention what happened to his parents. I do not recall that. But in the books, we get to see Neville and his parents as well in St. Mungo's Hospital. We see that how the Cruciatus curse, I think it was the Cruciatus, how that affected them and the effect it also has on Neville. Honestly, I wanted something to happen between Neville and Luna in the movies, and honestly maybe in the books as well. But when people say they don't want to just pair of random characters, I'm like, okay, I get it. The next one, Kreacher. Kreacher. We introduced the Kreacher in Chamber of Secrets. We get to meet him. But his character really shines in, I believe it was Goblet of Fire, because that was where he was. Because in Goblet of Fire, he's now one of the house-elves in the kitchen. Oh, that's one thing. We never even talk about the fact that, house-elves are the ones running the kitchens. Like, the whole subplot of house-elves and how they are treated in Wizarding Society is barely spoken about. That and goblins as well. Dobby at Hogwarts, we barely ever get to see that. And just as we barely ever get to see Dobby at Hogwarts, there was one house elf who was very closely intertwined with Dobby at Hogwarts, and this was Winky. We did not even get introduced to Winky at all, and the role she played in figuring out that Barty Crouch Jr. was actually pretending to be Mad Eye Moody. Because we don't get to like see Dobby at Hogwarts, because we don't get to experience a lot of Kreacher, and you know, the whole character growth, his character arc, like Kreacher's character's arc was very significant. Like going from somebody who is like, get out of here, and you know, somebody who tries to find loopholes when Harry tells him to do stuff after Sirius gave Harry ownership of everything he had. That also was not in the books. We did not know of that in the books at all. And then him becoming somebody who is so willing and happy to serve Harry, and is like, oh, I'll have food ready for you and all that. I really feel like we missed out on this very important subplot of like the treatment of house-elves as a whole in Wizarding society and how that needs to be better. What Hermione was fighting for. One funny situation that happens in the books is, because we know house-elves, whenever they pick up a piece of clothing, they are free. I think a piece of clothing from their master, they become free. So Hermione would place clothing materials all around the Gryffindor common room so that one of the house-elves would pick it, but the house-elves were so insulted because that's all they know. That's all their culture, their society, that's all they've been socialized for. So they find it insulting, and honestly, the fact that Dobby wanted to be a free elf, they found him like a weirdo, like, you're very freaking weird. And even Dobby being free, he wasn't even collecting good enough money because Dumbledore offered him money, was like, oh no, that's way too much. Just give me this very little and let me be this free house elf. They, because of Hermione kept placing clothes in the common room, they stopped cleaning the common room. And Dobby was the only one who was actually cleaning the common room. And he had like hat stacked on top of each other. And he had the socks stacked on top of each other as well because he just loved clothes. Dobby's character as a whole in the books was so much more fleshed out, and when he died in book 7, I was just like, that was sad. That was truly sad again. I think he died at the end of movie 7. By the time I got to that part, I was just like, that's sad that, you know, this random house elf we've only seen occasionally but was prominent in book 2 died. But, you know, casualties of war. But in the books, I was just like, that is heartbreaking. Winky, we've already talked about her. Peeves, the ghost who is a menace in the school. We barely get to see him at all. The Vernons, we didn't get to explore their character as much. And I think the part that I was particularly missing from the books was like the start of book 7, where the Wizarding, like the 2 people who came to pick them up to put them into protection were insulted. Like, how dare you treat Harry Potter, the proclaimed savior of the wizarding world, this way? Like, you don't even want to tell him goodbye. What the heck is going on here? And also, like, I believe book 5, Order of the Phoenix, when Dursley has an encounter with the Dementors, and, you know, it messes up with his head. And when Vernon was like, you are getting out of my house. Are they the Vernons? Are they the Dursleys? The Uncle Vernon? I don't know, man, but the names are mixed up. But like, and also just like Dumbledore talking about the whole protection, because I was confused about like why Harry had to leave there. I feel like there were so many parts of the movie that only somebody who had read the book would understand. I was like, why is he living here? And why couldn't he, you know, live with Hermione? Or why couldn't he live with Ron? Because I'm very sure they would have been more than happy to take him in. Snape. The Snape in the movies, I think, was a much nicer character than the Snape I experienced in the books. The book Snape was a bully. He was nothing but a bully. And, you know, that whole ending part of him showing that, you know, he had always liked Lily and, you know, he extended some protection towards Harry, blah, blah. I'm just like, please, that's some BS. You were a mean person. No adult should be treating a child like this. Because of what his father did to you or whatever, that is no justifiable reason for you to treat a child like that. Snape was a bully, man. This man told the Slytherin house that Lupin was a werewolf, and that's why Remus Lupin had to leave. Who does that? I mean, Lupin would have had to leave eventually because of the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher curse, but like, I'm like, guy, let go of the shackles of your teenage years. Let go of it. Like, why are you so stuck in the past? Like, be so for real. Then we have Sirius. Sirius, Black, we get to meet in Prisoner of Azkaban, but after Prisoner of Azkaban, we only get to see bits and pieces of him. And so honestly, when he dies in Order of the Phoenix, I'm just like, that's sad for Harry. But through the books, we get to see Sirius as a main character, and we also get to experience some of what being in Azkaban has done to him and get into his psyche a bit more. Like, we can see how he still, honestly, is still a bit childish, and we get to see how, honestly, it felt more like a brother to Harry than a godfather because of the way he would egg Harry on to do some, honestly, frankly, dangerous things. Like, sometimes Hermione would be like, if this is something we think Sirius would approve of you doing, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it. And I was just like, dang, see finish. The Weasleys. There's Bill, there's Charlie. Bill, we get to meet a bit in the books, especially during the Dragon Challenge and the Goblet of Fire. But then Charlie, he and Fleur, we get to see their romance a bit, the backstory into how they met, and also very heavily in book 7 when they helped out after Harry, Hermione, and Ron escaped the Malfoys. Let's also even talk about Ginny, her romance with Harry. I remember always thinking, like, where the heck did this romantic relationship develop from? Like, this is very strange. Then we'll move on to Cho. Cho in the books, our whole romance with Harry. Actually, even before that, because we first get introduced to Cho in Prisoner of Azkaban, where Harry meets her as a seeker on the Ravenclaw. I believe she's in Ravenclaw. Yeah, on the Ravenclaw team. Harry's like, oh, she's beautiful. The whole situation Harry goes through trying to ask her to be his dates at the U ball, and her already going with Cedric, and the whole heartbreak she experiences with Cedric, and then how the movies make it seem like it is her who exposed the Dumbledore's army hiding place, which is in the Room of Requirements, to that horrid woman, whatever her name is. She who must not be named. But rather, it being her friend. I just feel like her being the one to expose it kind of like just changes the situation a bit. And the next one I want to talk about is the Horcruxes. The movie kind of explains the Horcruxes a bit, but one thing the book really emphasizes, especially like book 7, because the Horcrux situation comes in book 6, is how it's a secret and Harry can't tell anyone aside Hermione and Ron. And understandably, because the moment Harry tells somebody, Voldemort is going to hide the Horcrux in another place, and then they'll be worse off than the situation they are currently at. Harry was just like talking about Horcruxes, but then maybe that was because he was already in Hogwarts. But I honestly remember him talking about Horcruxes in front of other people, even before they get to Hogwarts. And I just feel like that whole important plot point, because it becomes a very tricky situation he has to go through when everybody's asking him, so what are you doing? Like, Mrs. Weasley was like, where are you going? They were like, Remus Lupin was like, where are you going? I can help you, I have experienced more magic than you. Charlie was like, where are you going? What are you guys doing? So that whole situation, like, how them wanting to do what Dumbledore told them to do is kind of going against what because everybody else is like, so we should just believe that you guys will figure everything out and you will be successful. Like, you're 3 teenagers who haven't even finished their magical education, and you want us to fully entrust, like, at least one adult should know what you're doing and be in charge of you. And I feel like, honestly, Dumbledore should have at least placed one person in charge of them, because I just feel like an adult would have helped them out, but maybe not Remus, since he was already married. So which other adult? Maybe Kingsley? Shacklebolt? That's a very weird name. Let's not lie. That's a very freaking weird name. You named the one black guy Shacklebolt. Another aspect of Harry's character, like the one scene I wish was in the movies, was the beatdown of Malfoy after the Quidditch game. And the one more thing that really was missing in the movies that I feel like really dived into the whole academic side of Harry Potter series was the OWL exams. The stress Harry was going through, not just Harry, but also Ron. The stress everyone was going through during the OWL exams to make sure they got like passable grades. And then, the whole stress of like, oh, what did I get? What are my results? Like, I feel like that just reminded us that yes, we're in a school, because I feel like much of the series just became adventure after adventure after adventure, and we barely ever got to experience like the academic side of Hogwarts. There were a few full circle moments I took note of in the books and movies. The part of "Are you a witch?" that Ron tells Hermione in Philosopher's Stone. In Deathly Hallows, she goes back to him and she goes, "Are you a wizard?" I'm just like, oh, that is such a cute full circle moment. Also just like the going back to the Chamber of Secrets that, you know, they had in book 2, and going back there for like the Basilisk Fang was just like a recall to a time when things were much more straightforward and easier, and we're not trying to kill a wizard who has split his soul in 7, actually 8, and it's pretty much impossible to kill. Honestly, great book series. I feel like I'm going to get a version of the books in my bookshelf, just like a trophy. I read all 7 books. I immensely enjoyed all 7. My favorite of all 7, let's think about it. I think I really enjoyed Goblet of Fire. Goblet of Fire as well as Deathly Hallows. See, the movie Deathly Hallows was very confusing for me because they were just going from place to place and I did not understand any of what was happening. Like, it was very, very confusing. Like, okay, we're looking for Horcruxes, but what's the mindset? How are we going about looking for these Horcruxes? But with the books, I was able to like understand the stress. Like, even when they went to like what's it called, number 12 Grimmauld Place in the movies, I was like, where is this place? I didn't realize that it was where they had gone to in Goblet of Fire and I believe Order of the Phoenix. So I was just like, where is this strange place? So I really enjoyed the book Deathly Hallows. The whole Ron leaving them, Ron not telling Harry your parents are dead, but Harry actually being the one who said my parents are dead. Oh, that's one of the bastardization of Ron's character that happened in the movies. Like, it was just anywho, Deathly Hallows was a really good book, as well as Goblet of Fire. I just love the whole idea of like challenges and all that, and Fleur continually being sweet on Harry because she saved his sister who was actually not dying, and Harry have a saving people thing. Because I read this book, like I consumed this book through June. By the time I finished reading it, I was just like, what do I read next? Where do I go from here? And I tried starting the Mortal Instruments. I've read it, I believe, twice now. I tried reading it again the 3rd time, but I was just like, oh, I don't think I want to read the Mortal Instruments. And I have heard rumors that the Mortal Instruments is supposed to be fan fiction of Ron and Ginny romance. Ew. And I just wanted to stay in the Harry Potter universe, so I decided to watch the Fantastic Beasts movie series, because I found out that it wasn't based off of a book, but they actually wrote the original screenplay for the movies. Does anyone have any word on when movies 4 and 5 will be coming out? And honestly, also, I think I prefer the actor, the Grindelwald actor in movie 3 to whoever played Grindelwald in movies 1 and 2. I feel like the one in movie 3 had more charisma and had more people trust me, but I'm actually a villain energy. Least favorite book in the Harry Potter series, honestly, for me, was Half-Blood Prince. I know we used Half-Blood Prince to set up the whole idea of Horcruxes, but I was not honestly the biggest fan. Well, that, and I think a follow-up to that would be Prisoner of Azkaban. Prisoner of Azkaban was nice because we got to meet Lupin and we got to do Expecto Patronum. But besides that, I just feel like there wasn't as much going on in that book. But overall, this was a very wonderful series. I really enjoyed it. Why didn't I read this when I was younger? I'll give the overall series, perhaps. I don't even want to rate the book. I just want to say I enjoyed the series and I loved it. Alright, we've come to the end of today's discussion video. This is a very long video where I just yap a lot. But I hope you enjoy it and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye!